Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Kalping Chua. I am the director of the Susan B. Meister Child Health Evaluation and Research Center, also known as CHEAR. And I am delighted to welcome you to the 18th annual Susan B. Meister Lecture in Child Health. To frame this lecture, I'd first like to tell you a little bit about CHEAR. CHEAR was founded in 1997 and was the first center in the US solely focused on pediatric health services research, a field that focuses on determining how to get children and young adults the right care at the right time at the right cost. Our 14 interdisciplinary faculty include general pediatricians, pediatric subspecialists, economists, and epidemiologists. We conduct research in a variety of areas, including the cost of pediatric care, vaccination policy, the opioid epidemic, and improving the care of children with chronic conditions and critical illness. We publish over 120 manuscripts per year, including in top journals such as the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association. We also receive national media coverage for our work from outlets such as CNN, NPR, and the New York Times. While our research focuses on healthcare, we recognize that this is only one of the many determinants of child health. Thus, we regularly work with research groups across the University of Michigan campus who focus on other determinants of child health. We also host programming that amplifies the importance of these other determinants, including the Meister Lecture Series. Since 2006, these lectures have featured keynote speeches from leading experts on key child health issues, ranging from housing to education to sports. Last year, the Meister Lecture focused on the importance of child health, of music to child health and development. We were fortunate to hear from Anthony White, the artistic director of the Detroit Youth Choir, as well as to experience a live performance from members of the choir. The energy and excitement sparked by last year's lecture was truly amazing and prompted us to focus this year's lecture on further amplifying discussions on the importance of music to child health and development. Now, before I begin this year's lecture, I want to express gratitude to several people. First, I want to thank Matthew Van Biesen and the team at the University Musical Society. UMS has been a simply outstanding partner to CHEAR in co-organizing this event, including identifying our keynote speaker and panelists, as well as promoting the lecture through UMS channels. To Matthew, Mary, Jessica, Sarah, Kyan, and Alex, we are truly grateful for your support. I also want to thank Dr. Susan Meister. Susan and Dr. Gary Freed, the first director of CHEAR, had the vision to create this lecture series 20 years ago. Susan and her husband, Paul, have been outstanding partners throughout CHEAR's history. Susan and Paul, thank you for all that you do for CHEAR and for all that you do to advance the health and well-being of children and families. I have one other item to cover before we commence our lecture, which is to announce the winner of the Susan B. Meister Award for Best Paper in Child Health Policy. This award recognizes a paper from a University of Michigan student or postdoctoral fellow that makes a significant contribution to a pressing issue in child health policy. This year, I am pleased to announce that this year's award winner is Abigail Kappelman. Her paper, which was published in the American Journal of Epidemiology, found that Black women in South Carolina experienced lower levels of lifetime exposure to affluent neighborhoods compared with white women. Furthermore, her paper found that this difference was an important driver of the higher rates of preterm birth and low birth weight among the infants of Black women. I'd like to invite Abigail now to the stage to receive her award. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Nicola Benedetti. Nicola is one of the most sought-after violinists of her generation. Her ability to captivate audiences and her wide appeal as an advocate for classical music has made her one of the most influential artists of today. Nicola's achievements are too numerous to list, so I will only highlight a few. In October 2022, she became the festival director of the Edinburgh International Festival. In taking that role, she became both the first Scottish and the first female festival director since the festival began in 1947. She was the winner of the Grammy Award for Best Classical Instrumental Solo in 2020, as well as Best Female Artist at both the 2012 and 2013 Classical Brit Awards. In 2021, BBC Music Magazine named her Personality of the Year for her online support of many young musicians during the pandemic. Her recent recordings of Vivaldi Concerti and Elgar's Violin Concerto entered at #1 in the UK's official classical album chart. Other recent recordings include her Grammy Award-winning album, written especially for her by jazz musician Wynton Marsalis. Nicola has always been a dedicated, passionate ambassador and leader in music education. Her commitment was underlined in 2019 when she established the Benedetti Foundation. The foundation delivers transformative experiences through mass music events and unites those who believe that musical is integral to life's education. The foundation believes in the strength of music and the power of mass inspirational movements to connect cultures and communities. In its first 4 years, the foundation has worked with close to 70,000 participants of all ages and levels across 105 countries. Its free online educational video resources have had over 6 million views. We are truly honored to have Nicola serve as our keynote speaker today. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. It is such a deep honor for me to be here to speak to you all today. I would like to, of course, thank Dr. Kalping Chua for the kind invitation. And of course, also thank you so much to the fantastic Matthew Van Biesen, who I've known for many years and whose work and leadership I've been hugely inspired by. Thank you, Matthew, for the general invitation here to allow me the opportunity to participate in the rich and diverse program of the university, the university's musical society, and of course this prestigious Meister lecture on child health policy. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Ken Fisher. When I was applying for the role at Edinburgh International Festival, I tentatively asked a few colleagues and friends of his if they thought he would consider speaking with me for a few minutes, thinking I'm sure he would have far more pressing things to do with his time. But he, of course, was quick to respond, efficient in setting up a moment to speak, and unbelievably generous with his time, insight, and gave me advice I still rely on to this day. So thank you so much. Today I'm going to share some of my own personal journey with the violin and with music, and of course the resultant work of the Benedetti Foundation begun 6 years ago. But before doing so, I would just like to take a moment to recognize where I am, where we are. You see, I left school when I was 15 and I began touring aged 16. And I have therefore had a long-held private desire to return to a place such as this, to patiently and carefully study and refine a particular area of human achievement, somewhere I can spend time absorbing and observing the past, but also considering the possibility that I or we collectively just might be able to contribute something of value, perhaps even of difference or newness, but most importantly, something that can create a better world for ourselves and for others. Now, of course, despite my formal education ending so young, the study of classical music is no stranger to patience and careful study. In fact, one of the largest gifts within the study of classical music that I hear rarely articulated is to spend countless hours looking at the manuscript of, for example, Bach's violin sonatas and partitas. And in that quiet, solitary space of the practice room, where concentration turns into meditation, and meditation becomes a spiritual connection to the accumulative knowledge that lives within those notes, I have countless times visualized the long study and patience of Bach and all he represents, and find few things in life more moving. not because the reality of it is anything like our romanticized Hollywood version of perseverance. And I live alongside a composer and I see those slow, silent hours, so I know a thing or two about it. But because of the capability and the capacity and the humility of a person such as him is one of life's greatest mysteries. I've often been stood silent in a practice room considering things like, in the year 1705, Bach requested 4 weeks of leave to walk a 250-mile round trip to listen to the great organist Buxtehude. He ended up staying for months and returning with a changed compositional style that wasn't at all welcome, never mind celebrated. He copied by hand the scores of Vivaldi, Corelli, and Frescobaldi. It's estimated for literally thousands of hours. As a teenager, he accessed forbidden manuscripts and copied them in near darkness. It's said to have severely damaged his eyesight. And by the way, in case you were not aware, he had 20 children, 10 of whom survived into adulthood. His home was also his workplace, where by 1723 in Leipzig, where he spent and worked the last 27 years of his life, he was composing at least one cantata per week. That's 20 to 30 minutes of complex music, copying out parts, teaching students and his own children, rehearsing singers and instrumentalists. But do you know that a vast portion of his music was written for the express purpose of education? Arguably the most spiritual and high-minded of all composers was writing, more often than not, for the education of others. In his writings about his inventions, he talks about the desirability to learn. So although no, I have not experienced formal education like that of this university, I have thought long and hard about the accumulative hours of patient, slow study that is normal practice for so many here and so many surrounding us on campus, but I think we can all agree is becoming an increasing rarity and therefore increasingly sacred. I also recognize that we're in an environment where a whole entire orchestra of students can be playing so well that the musicians of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra are all walking around saying it's some of the best playing of that piece that they have ever heard. And I recognize that we are in a rare place that has the conscience, maturity, and presence of mind to link pediatrics from the medical school with a musician like myself. So it was with great care, therefore, that I've considered talking about the precious, tender, complex, and hugely important matter of child health development, and specifically the magical language of music with all its tentacles and infusions into the human condition, comparable, I would argue, to very few, if any, other methods of communication. Now, to start with my journey, as many in this room know, the study of classical music and elite musical instrumental playing is an extraordinary, complex, and pressured learning environment, and can be wrought with competitive, ambitious parenting, a surprisingly high volume of anti-creative and sometimes even anti-musical teaching methods, an often too harsh and sometimes too soft teaching approach, and a dearth of nuanced psychological understanding about how to get the best out of young people, both in terms of final result that supports a sense of pride and achievement, and of process and day-to-day enjoyment. In our lives, we are all compelled to impact positively or negatively what we wish had or had not happened in greater or lesser degrees to our younger selves or loved ones around us. But whether or not we possess the clarity of mind to recognize the origins of our compulsions in our lives, the fire that spurs us on to create real change is often born from intimate, deeply personal experiences. My personal journey has, for whatever reasons I may or may not have analysed accurately, led to a life just as dedicated to changing lives through music education as it is to elite performance. I began playing the violin when I was 4 years old. Both my parents were not musicians, but we were lucky to have a local, thriving Suzuki method community. The principles of teaching music this way centered around using your hearing ability, listening a lot to recordings, following extremely simplified physical movements and stances, and playing real music and real tunes from day one. You were spared lesson after lesson of pure technique, and each time you held the violin, you had regular reminders of the why of playing and the core substance and beauty and fun of music making. I began practicing every day, encouraged, well, it's a nice way of putting it, encouraged by my mum to never skip a day. When I speak about my upbringing and my mum, I'm often being asked, did I not miss out on a childhood and was it not overly harsh? But in all honesty, I feel she had a fantastic approach. When it came to practice, it was little but often at first, and the little turned slowly into not so little. And by the time I was 7, I was practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, and often far more than that on weekends. But my mum was always looking and listening and watching, paying close attention to both me and my sister, sensing out, did we really want to do this? Did we have genuine love for music? I will never forget one day complaining about practicing. I was putting up a fight and I just didn't feel like playing the violin that day. Anyone who's tried, how many people here have tried the violin? Enough people to know how painful it is to listen to, especially those first couple of years. So my mum turned to me and said, well, you don't have to play the violin then. She did not say I didn't have to practice. She said I didn't have to play at all. I was so offended and so hurt and so shocked that she could insinuate such a thing. How could she suggest that I would not want to play the violin? And I said as much back to her. And she replied, with the gift of opportunity comes great responsibility. You don't treat the gift of music and of an instrument like a toy. If you want to play, you practice. She put the responsibility in my hands. I was in a bind I could not get out of, but in that moment understood something about the consequences of my choices and how they applied to progress in my life. At 8 years old, my fantastic Suzuki teacher realized I needed to move on to more advanced teaching and suggested I auditioned for the Yehudi Menuhin School, a specialist boarding music school set up by the great violinist himself. Its intentions were to embrace the true individual that otherwise did not fit into more conforming school environments. Young people that lived and breathed music and wanted a protected environment when practice and instrumental lessons were of the highest importance. I remember driving up to that school for the first time. It was summer and all the windows were open and I could not believe what I was hearing. I knew that playing on this level was possible, but only on recordings and only of people past the age of 30, certainly not for people my age. Very quickly I would discover, however, the tumultuous, intense, and one would now no doubt call at times abusive environment, when met with the talented, gifted young people, it did produce extraordinary results. Throughout my teens, between music school, violin competitions, summer schools, etc., I witnessed endless tears, ridiculing, name-calling, and extreme, and some would say unhealthy worshipping, almost deifying student-to-teacher relationship. And I'm speaking like I'm saying this was wrong, but everyone was complicit, and not always, but often the central driving force in that relationship was the student themselves. The single most important thing in my life was improving on the violin. I was horrendously homesick, but didn't care. I was very scared of my violin teacher, but didn't care. She was my key to improvement and was therefore the single most important force in my life. Parents and teachers supporting a young person's dreams are naturally in an incredibly difficult position. My mum used to say, the more love you had and the more love you showed and gave genuinely, the higher your chance of withstanding pressure. She felt this way about parenting, but I soon understood it to be a balance applicable to progress on the violin at an elite level. I always knew when my mind and heart had been overloaded with pressure more than it had been with trust, with flow, with creativity, and with a deeper, more relaxed state of mind. When you do something extremely difficult, but something that takes place in real time, and by that I include all performing arts and all forms of sport, you are faced consistently with an existential challenge that exists internally. It is a battle, and some people say it's a battle of mind and body, but I would say it's far more complex than that. It is an ultimate battle and journey towards trust. As you accumulate and absorb the million bits of information required to excel, you must equally develop with ever more ferocity your sense of trust. So by all means, in that environment, to instill discipline, provide boundaries, encourage progress through the daily grind and inspire ambition is so vital and important. But to every teacher, parent, and member of that support system, it's always important to be on the lookout, where The balance of these things sits with love and with trust. Now, it was a good long time ago that I realized how much of the music educating world was working at cross purposes with itself, and possibly creating more harm than good in trying to superimpose the elite learning of instruments onto a principal purpose of social impact. The impulses and desires and needs behind setting up the Paris Conservatoire were very different to the founding of a post-World War II national music program for all, free for all, high quality for all. And yet, the above narrative about the perils of elite performance, I have learned through 20 years of touring and observing schools and teachers and students all over the world, both apply to the creative potential of any young person at any level of their experience with music in education, and can conversely wrongly impose a set of priorities unfit for the realizing the best, most unique and fullest potential of what music can offer in a broad education setting. I did my first tour of schools when I was 16 years old. I had newly won the BBC Young Musician of the Year competition in the United Kingdom, and honestly could not tell you what made me at that age so clear-headed about bringing the violin into environments outside of the concert hall. It was sort of a blinding instinct, something I just had to do, but it was tough. Large classes of 5 to 6-year-olds. I think they're the toughest audiences in the world, especially if you don't know what you're doing, because their instinct and acting on that instinct has not yet been put through the grind and rigor of life. And yes, they picked up on my nervousness. In those first few schools, I was sort of devoured and torn apart. Eventually, I learned to see the funny side. I learned to relax into the nuance back and forth with these young people, to work with them rather than to present to them. This tour was also my first real insight into the heights of community music teaching at its best. And of course, I also witnessed the most downtrodden, isolated, and lackluster. Now, at 16, you're generally a bit awkward anyway, but I forced myself to try to speak to people, look at people, to explore the other dimensions of music's gift in informal environments. This tour inspired what would become that 20-year dedication to classes, teachers, conservatoires, and colleges, and social change through music programs around the world. In the years following, I developed a growing desperation to understand more about what people do, how they work together, what is going so wrong, and what I could possibly do to help. I saw school after school and met teacher after teacher, all of them desperate to feel more connected to the rest of the world, but crucially more connected to the ultra-professional, often ultra-exclusive, and often unfriendly professional performance world. I began to question how these worlds had separated so successfully, and how anything that combined education settings with the professional music-making world was often, not always, but often carried out cynically or lazily, or was somewhat tokenistic, and often so formal and awkward. I did more and more research, not so much through reading, but through talking to people on the ground. I identified that leaving teachers out of the chain of activity was largely responsible for creating a deeper divide and was separating a community that could instead be building and bonding around the power of music. I became a board member of Sistema Scotland, one of the most successful international programs inspired by Venezuela's El Sistema. In fact, I spoke to their now over 150 teachers just the other day and had to hold back tears when I saw how they have grown and the integrity that they still conduct themselves with. We spoke in that meeting about the importance of insisting that the orchestra is a magical gift to humanity, about resisting the stagnant passive interpretation of the orchestra and insisting upon a new creative interpretation of what that could look like, and about the fact that when you combine the energetic field of 50 individuals with the sound waves of 50 instruments, the possibilities are endless. Sistema Scotland was one of the countless extraordinary organisations I worked with and contemplated the full challenge of doing music education well. Not just music education, but how can you do it well? Eventually, with the backing and generosity of some fantastic philanthropists in the UK and the friendship and tenacity of an extraordinary colleague by the name of Laura Gardner, who I in fact studied Suzuki music with when I was 3 years old, we began the Benedetti Foundation. Our founding vision was to unite the world of music education through uncovering and sharing its best practices and also celebrating its greatest advocates, to create single, explosive, life-changing experiences, always through mass musical events for teachers and young people, celebrating music participation on all levels. And our ultimate destination is, of course, to have that empowered society, one that is more creative and more enlightened. You'll be thrilled to know that our vision over the last 6 years has shortened somewhat. To this date, and over a five to 6 year period, we've now worked with over 100,000 people, largely young people, but our oldest attendee on record is 92, and our youngest is 2 years old. I'm glad someone likes that. And the 92-year-old took part in one of the many different activities we put on, and those particular ones are adult playing days. So people who I meet so often at the end of performances who perhaps gave up playing an instrument when they were young and returned to it later in life, but don't want to do it alone. So we provide days where all of these people can come together. The foundation stands for a few fundamental principles that insist upon the beliefs that a singular moment can change the trajectory of a life. It's something that we find a big challenge when it comes to funding our organization, because a lot of people and trusts and foundations, they would like to see consistent work within one community. But we have anecdote after anecdote after anecdote that if that single experience is uplifting enough, it's powerful enough, bonds are sealed in that moment and they continue way past that moment. We believe that collaborative working is possible if steered with care and a laser focus on the true priority of what we are trying to deliver for other people, and importantly, shown only through positive demonstration and action, not through bringing others down and critiquing. That teachers are the beating heart of education, and to empower them, inspire them, and make them feel a part of something great and part of a community is the single only way to create a cascading pyramid effect that has the possibility of impacting more and more people. We have a cultural rhetoric of international curiosity, and that means that we really have to explore rhythm and song and dance from all over the world and integrate that into the instrumental teaching. We do not shy away from celebrating classical music. We teach a child who has never played an instrument with as much seriousness as someone who is playing at the top of their game and who's likely to become concertmaster of a great orchestra. We use a geographically moving and flexible model of workshops, bringing all levels of ability into the same place and giving everyone their say and insisting that you can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with as much integrity as you play Beethoven. And through this positive demonstration, the community spirit that has grown and deepened around this work, which has stayed true despite the enormous challenge, it has stayed true to the spirit of collaboration, is of course more than I could have dreamed of. We try to also address the physicality of playing, the fact that so often you see young people playing instruments and simply not breathing properly. Although we focus on string instruments, and that largely being, well, I play the violin, first of all, but it's largely because the string instruments are the easiest to be able to bring lots and lots of people together for mass music making, of course, secondary to voice. But surprisingly, perhaps to some, I don't believe the whole country should be learning to play string instruments. And I have many times in my career seen musicians advocate for instruments being disseminated across the country and everyone being taught an instrument. I don't think it's possible nor practical. And I also don't believe that it gives the best music participation experience to every child. I would instead advocate for access to the highest quality general musicianship and music participation lessons in primary schools for all children to support a more all-round personal, emotional, psychological and social development, and that takes precedent over the instrumental learning. I've seen teaching that is able to develop life skills and transferable skills, and looking at everything that is uniquely musical and where we can see its replication and fallout in daily life experience. For those who are playing instruments, we do tackle that physicality, and at the beginning of every single session, we shout from the rooftops to everyone there that making mistakes are not only fine, but they are desired. We try to immediately release and sort of get rid of that tension. We want to see people trying and throwing their heart and soul into the act of music making, because physicality is musicality, and that is technique, and technique is physicality, and it's all connected. And quite often we relegate the latter two to something that sits underneath music, but we're living, breathing, present physical beings. And the more quickly we learn to respect that within that broader educational environment and embrace it and love that and use it. Our senses are so often starved of that oxygen and space. To make music is an uphill battle. And we need to create that freedom of physicality and freedom of mind. At the Foundation, we're of course open to all genres, but we do not teach pop vernacular, music that can be easily learnt through listening to a 4-minute track, music that is aggressively sold to us and is very difficult to not hear, is very difficult to escape, and music that we're often bombarded with every minute of the day. I do not think that that needs to be dominant in schools or in the process of education. There are many reasons why. Sometimes it's the subject matter, and it's often intensely personalized and often quite myopic. Its rhythmic structure can be very addictive and hugely simplified. There's rarely any sort of development, but most importantly, it is everywhere. So we focus on what children and educators and teachers cannot access easily. And finally, too much of the most prominent public dialogue around the fight for music education is negative. Our way is to create such excitement in mass numbers through more and more personal stories, resulting in children, teenagers, schools, teachers, and parents alike joining forces to say, we want this in our lives and we are not willing to give it up. We want to see our public portrayed lead by excitement and positivity, not by lecturing and shaming. We want to highlight and celebrate stories told by people truly representing the totality of our society on how the best of musical education has impacted their surroundings in immeasurable ways. So if I return to the values and benefits of music education, I would say that they can be roughly broken down into 4 categories. One is the world of creativity, expression, communication, and emotion, the intangibles. The second is, of course, the work, the perseverance, the resilience, and the discipline. The third, much documented, is, of course, the cognitive development. And the fourth, in the case of mass music experiences, is that of community, of teamwork, of listening, and of empathy. Finally, I would like to pay tribute to a great artist who has chosen to dedicate his entire life's work to the education of others. And it's a person that's firmly on my mind at the moment, as he very sadly passed away recently. It's a man that I've been inspired by since I was a teenager. And his name is John Wallis. John Wallis is an emblem of a man I want us all to keep front of mind. He was a post-war baby born in 1949, and he in fact learned to play the cornet in a class of 40. and with the Paper Mills Junior Band. Their teacher was an electrician who came in to teach the class fresh off his day shift, still in his overalls. His dad was a joiner in the paper mill factory and his mum a spinner in the textile factory. Music was everywhere in his upbringing, and as he said, it poured out of and up through the soil. John became principal trumpet player of the Philharmonia Orchestra and principal of our National Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. John was a composer, arranger, teacher, and researcher who knew all too well the heights of musical excellence and artistic achievement. He loved music and poetry and prose and dance and song with all his heart. To give you an insight into the type of man he was, John, although already very sick, attended the 8-hour-long performance of Taverners' Veil of the Temple that opened our 2025 festival in Edinburgh, and he stayed through every minute of that performance. He led in Scotland what is still going strong, and it's called the Music Partnership Education Group, a Scottish collective of now over 75 partner organisations, local councils, teachers and charities forging combined advocacy messaging across the whole country. In my experience, one of very few successful organisations of its kind in the world. Through battle after battle to keep music education absolutely free for everyone in Scotland. And he won over and over again. The sheer volume of young musicians that have been directly and indirectly impacted by the tireless work of this man is untold and impossible to summarise. I dedicate all of this to him because John encompasses all things, not through always being soft and kind, he was not, but through fighting with integrity, for the best possible services for the largest possible number of people. He successfully showed what community impact an artist of the highest order can have if resilience and tenacity is deployed day after day through his knowing, born out of countless experiences, that people with a little inspiration and a little opportunity, and of course the removal of too many barriers, do want to come together around something positive. They want to participate in action that fills a room with joy. This can of course be done with kindness and humanity, but often doing the right thing for the largest number of people comes with the harshest of sacrifices. And against what is a deafening avalanche of anti-arts, anti-all people, anti-substance white noise that surrounds us all in this time, we can stand for better. So I would ask you all to let the legacy of John Wallace serve as a reminder to us all of what it means to serve all people. A reminder of our small place in a lineage of contributors dedicated to bettering life for others, and a reminder of the collective potential we have when we all consider in our own unique way our civil, civic, and moral duty to educate the future generations. So here's to John. Thank you all so much. Thank you very much.
Nicola, thank you so much. Those were amazing remarks. At this point, I'd like to commence our panel discussion and ask each of our panelists to please join the stage. All right, so I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to introduce each of these 4 distinguished experts and musicians. There is a detailed biography of each panelist in your program, so my introductions will be brief. First, I would like to introduce Stefan Dohr. Stefan is the principal horn of the Berliner Philharmoniker. He is widely regarded as an icon of his instrument, and one of the world's foremost horn players. His artistic curiosity and exceptional technical versatility have inspired many composers to write for him, resulting in important additions to the horn repertoire. He gives master classes worldwide and is taught at the Sibelius Academy, Helsinki. He serves as a visiting professor at the Royal College of Music in London and currently holds a guest professorship at the Norwegian Academy of Music. Second, I would like to introduce Renata Rangel. Renata is a vibrant Mexican-American percussionist from Chicago who earned her degree in percussion performance from the University of Michigan. Renata's performance career has taken her across the United States and abroad, collaborating with composers and musicians in a wide range of settings. Beyond performance, she is a passionate advocate for equity and access in the arts. She serves as the band program coordinator for the Rachel Carson Elementary Band Program at the Merritt School of Music, a program that provides free music education to low-income schools serving predominantly Black and brown students. Third, I would like to introduce Dr. Carlos Simon. Dr. Simon is the current composer in residence for the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. He is also the inaugural composer chair of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He was nominated for a 2023 Grammy Award for Best Contemporary Classical Composition for his album Requiem for the Enslaved. He earned his doctorate degree at the University of Michigan and was the recipient of the 2021 Sphinx Medal of Excellence, the highest honor bestowed by the Sphinx organization to recognize extraordinary classical, Black, and Latinx musicians. And finally, I would like to introduce Katrina Stroud. Katrina is a violinist who currently attends the University of Michigan. She serves as the principal second violinist of the University of Michigan University Philharmonic Orchestra. In 2023, she won second prize in the St. Paul String Quarter Competition and was a quarterfinalist in the Fischoff National Chamber Music Competition. She has performed in the Fabian Concert Series and in the Emmy Award-winning nationally televised program entitled A Night of Georgia Music. She has participated in a student-led program, the New Music Initiative for Black Voices, which collaborates with young Black composers and gives them a voice in the classical music industry. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Okay, so I'm just gonna get started with this question. So a key theme of our lecture today is the importance of music to child health and development. To that end, I'd like to ask each of you to think back to your own childhood. How did you first become involved with music, and how did music impact your health and development as a child? I'd like to ask Katrina to start, and then we can go down the line.
Yeah, so I started playing the violin when I was 3 years old. Obviously, I was so young, I didn't really have a say in the matter. It was more of my mom's decision than mine, but I've stuck with it. And then when I was 6 years old, I started taking piano lessons. And this teacher actually taught me a lot of music theory, and we did a lot of ear training and dictation. And he taught me a lot of what I know about music. And I would say all through elementary school, I really actually disliked playing the violin, and I really disliked practicing, but it was something that, my mom had me stick with it. And then as I switched teachers, I would say in about 8th grade to Dr. Pasha Sabori, he really, he introduced me to the world of classical music and brought me to my first music festival in the summer. And there I met a lot of other students who had gone through the same things as me and, disliked practicing as much as me. And I kind of found a community of students that had similar experiences as I. And that was when I really started my love for classical music.
Yeah, I guess. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. And Nikki, amazing job. I feel like we have a lot of similarities. I'm really curious to talk to you about, my upbringing is, I grew up, my first interaction with music is in church. My dad's a preacher. I actually come from 3 generations of preachers in my family, dating back to 1898. And so, my family has a tradition of starting churches, and each of the children does something in the church. Well, my duty was music. And my grandfather, he started this church. All my aunts and uncles did something in church. So I grew up in this tradition of learning music by ear. I didn't learn to read music until I was probably 16 years old. But what the church sort of taught me, it was a conservatory. It was learning oral skills. It was learning music in every key. It was, the discipline and the skill set. And also, main thing is service. This is the main thing. showing up every single week to better someone else's life spiritually. And that's something that I have taken with me as a composer. My journey as a composer is somewhat unorthodox, because I grew up in this way of learning music by ear, and then I started actually learning piano, and that and through the classical idiom, but that didn't work because I was improvising and adding blues riffs and stuff like that to Bach and Beethoven, and it's like, oh, you should probably be a composer. So, but that has allowed me to kind of shift, and I'm grateful for this journey as a musician in education.
Hello, everyone. Similar to Katrina, I started in piano when I was 5, also at the Merit School of Music where I now work. So it's been, my mom also pushed me through piano, even though I really did not like it. Although I'm grateful now because I was able to skip the piano prerequisites at the school. So thank you, Mom, for that. But yeah, I didn't like piano, but I was around the age of 9, 10 when my mom put me in the intro to band program, which was a week long where we got to try all the instruments. And she really wanted me to do trumpet because we're Mexican. And so, trumpet's a big instrument, especially in mariachi. And so she wanted me to play trumpet. And my brother was already playing saxophone. But little Renata, she wanted to do percussion. She wanted to hit some drums. She didn't see any women in the studio, any girls. It was all boys. And so she was like, why can't girls play? So that's what pushed me to pick percussion. And since then, it was a big love, and it led me to being here on this stage. So yeah, that's where my musical journey began. Yeah.
I have to make a confession. First of all, moms are always the ones, or most of the time, the ones that stand behind the first years of our musical education, but that's not the confession. The confession is that I started with viola. Viola is the instrument that everybody makes jokes about, but I have 2 brothers, one played the violin, the other the cello, so I stuck with the viola. And actually, I then changed the horn at the age of 10 when I heard the famous German horn soloist Hermann Baumann playing a church concert, and I decided to take that on. Did both parallel for a couple of years, and at the age of 15, I also left school at the time, but to study in Germany, you can study the arts or music without having the final high school degree. My children still laugh about my last examen grades, that when they found it, it's like hilarious. So I never actually then finished studying because I did an audition when I was 19 because I didn't want to go to the army at the time. That was still at the time, obligatory to go, but not if you had a very good position. So at age 19, I had my first position at the Frankfurt Opera as a principal horn, and from there decided to go on. For me, I think the most significant time was because we don't have the big repertoire that violinists or pianists have, so no hours practicing. And recently in a masterclass, someone asked me, what did you do in your studies? And I was thinking, I actually mostly played music with a lot of people, lots of chamber music, lots of even horn quartet, and lots of orchestra playing. Youth orchestra playing was one of the things that I loved the most. And it actually taught me for my career until now what community can do and what an orchestra, as you said, like if you put a lot of people together to make noise, it's fabulous.
Thanks for those stories. I'm also wondering, when you think about the role that music played in your childhood, how would you describe that? I mean, obviously it took up a lot of time, but how did it affect your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health? Another way of thinking about it is, how do you think your childhood would have been different had it not been for music?
Personally, I think music was a big escape for me. Even though I didn't like playing piano, I loved my friends that were in my piano group lessons. So being able to find friends that weren't just at my elementary school was a big thing for my mental health. And being able to kind of what Katrina said, like understand each other. You're going through the same emotions of, I don't want to practice, but my mom wants me to. Oh, but we actually kind of sound good when we do practice. Just being able to find that community and getting older into that high school age, I was just trying to find any way to not be at home. Not that my home life was bad, but it wasn't the best. And so to be able to find that community on Saturdays, Merritt has a conservatory. So to be able to play in the conservatory on Saturdays, and then I ended up finding an orchestra on Sundays. So I went to an arts high school, so I was literally doing music every single day of the week. And to me, it was that community that I needed for my own mental health. And I honestly, yeah, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have music in my life.
Yeah, kind of similar to Renata. I feel like music has always been a part of my life. There like wasn't a day in my life I think that, music hasn't been a part of. And since I started violin so young, I feel like violin has always kind of been tied to my identity. Like I would introduce myself, hi, I'm Katrina, I play the violin. And that's what everybody at school knew about me. So I think that really, it's always been tied to me. And I really couldn't imagine my life without the violin and without music. And and once I had found that violin studio that had a really strong community, that feeling of community and friendship through music and being able to play music with my friends was really impactful for me.
Yeah, I would say too. I mean, music is service for me. I learned that at an early age. I would, as a young teenager playing organ in my father's church, I, of course, every Sunday would not want to get up and play. It's like, oh, why? I want to rest. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Leave me alone. I wouldn't say that because he would do, yeah. But it wouldn't be nice. It's disrespectful. But I wanted to, I learned service. But going to the service and seeing people come in every single week to church, and you could see the pain and the struggle and the whatever what they had with the carrying from the week's work or whatever, you could see that coming in. But as they left, whatever they heard, whatever I played, whatever music they heard, whatever my dad said in the sermon, it lifted something off of them. And for me, I felt like I had a duty. It was like my father would always say, someone needs you today. Someone needs you. And hearing that as a 16-year-old, that's like, okay, I'll get up, I'll do it. I have this obligation to help someone else. And, that's something that I have kept in my music and as a person. What am I writing that will help someone? And you, as a composer, you don't know because the music takes on a life of its own and you just don't know how it impacts others.
I was definitely more self-centered on that. I loved the time in youth orchestra. It started already with the regional or city youth orchestra of the city of Essen, going there Fridays. I mean, this reoccurring weekday where you had the rehearsal for 3 hours and coming and you meet the friends that you only meet once a week and that they share the same passion is something beautiful. And then you advance to other youth orchestras and you meet people only 4 times a year, but you keep writing to them, letters at the time, no internet, no emails, really letters like with 13, 14, 15, and then talk about your experiences together. And the greatest thing was being in a community, having the same interests. And I grew up in a very populated region of Germany, and Essen had a high school that was specialized on music. So even there, the school orchestra rehearsed twice a week. There was choir, there was music going on every time, all the time, and everybody was talking about it. And of course, having the ambitious mother, being a music school teacher and director, and also the arranger for the church music, where I had to play like things with 2 recorders, a double bass, a cello, organ, whatever was there, she would arrange things and write things down. And that was very helpful at young age, that you had this permanent every day, every time, many times a week, doing this with fun and learning to be passionate somehow.
I just wanted to, I was remembering a TV program that was done in the UK, which was following the lives of several musicians who were really suffering with their mental health. And it was such a strange program because it set up with every single protagonist on the show that music was kind of the cause of their mental health issues, but then also presented that music was kind of the savior too. But I just think it is so uplifting and important and inspiring for us all to hear what Carlos is saying, because I think it really helps our internal health if we can position our choices and our playing and things we do as being in service of other people. And obviously I was speaking quite a lot about what has also lost its way in music playing and music participation and music education and the pressures in that environment. And I think that, back to Bach, that act of service to a large community, act of service to other people, the act of educating as being a part of your life, I think that's for ourselves and others. It's a healthy thing. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments. So my next question, is about barriers to accessing music education during childhood. I'm actually wondering if any of you had experiences accessing music education, or have you seen your students experiencing significant barriers? What seems to be most prominent?
Well, I'll say, okay, so when I started, I, of course, came from this background of learning by ear, sorry. And I'll just tell you a story. So I did my undergraduate degree at Morehouse College, where it's a historically black college in Atlanta. And I could read pretty well by then, but I still had this gospel music and, this tradition of improvisation in my musical DNA. And I was writing music at that point, but I didn't know the technique of being a composer. I didn't know how to make my scores clean and legible and to where a conductor would say, oh, I want to program this work. And that took some time. And so when I got ready to apply for graduate school, mainly my doctorate, I applied 3 times and did not get in. It wasn't until the 3rd time that I applied in Michigan, the last time, that was only school, that I was able to get in. But each time that I was rejected, I went to a different teacher and found out things that I was missing, that I didn't necessarily learn in my undergraduate or even my high school as a composer, high school training. Little small things that make a big, huge difference, like a title page. How long is the piece? List the instrumentation. Program notes. What is this piece about? Have a title page. Okay, this piece is commissioned by so-and-so. These little small details make a huge difference when you're trying to pitch it to to a conductor. And I did not necessarily get those elements when I was, learning. But I think the small things really matter in music. Yeah, you can go into the socioeconomic elements and how that influences, getting to terminal degrees and graduate schools. But that's something that stuck out to me as a composer, and I'm wondering how that translates to other disciplines. And because that's education in our society usually equates to more money. The more education you have, the more money you make, right? And so, what are the things that are left out or not allowed, or not, or learned by students because of this, either discrimination or being left out? So.
I think on a very easy and broader view, if I say I went to the youth orchestra there, I went to do this, I went to do this, of course, my mother took the time and had the passion to do that. So not everybody has, of course, the time. Here the distances are, of course, much further. I mean, you'd have to travel from A to B. You don't have a small country with a good railway system that brings you, or your whole youth orchestra, when you're 13, 14, to a place where you rehearse for a week. I think on a very, very simple view of it, it's just also the money. You have to have an instrument, you have to pay for that. You have to have a teacher where you go to that is in your vicinity and has the passion and has the quality. And these are very simple things, but I think they, of course, we all, I think, all of us or most of us very much had a very first teacher that was a very big influence to us, as I can at least hear from or see. And being lucky to find that person, or having a parent that asked before to find that person that has a big influence, is definitely one thing. For me, one of the biggest, when I see who I played in youth orchestra with and who was like in a very high quality standard and gave up playing the instrument, a lot of time was fear, stage fear, or the fear of not being good enough. A lot of time, even if they were good, but their reflection was very different to what actually came out of the instrument. And then a lot of times these people doubted themselves so much at the age 16, 17, 18, that they did not even want to study because they couldn't cope with the pressure.
For me, it was, luckily for me, I was the younger sibling, so my brother was the first trial for my mom. But my mom she's an immigrant from Mexico, and so I think the biggest barrier for us, yes, of course, it was economical reasons, but again, Merit is a great program that offers financial aid. It was knowing about Merit in the first place, knowing where to look for these resources was something that my mom had no idea about. But my elementary school had a bilingual parent committee that she was a part of, and there were a few moms on the board that were pretty well educated when it came to resources and extracurriculars for the kids. And the first thing that they told my mom was, you need to have your kid in extracurriculars. You need to have them, and it doesn't matter what it is. So my mom put me in swimming, tennis, gymnastics, and none of the physical sports stuck. But music was the one where I was like, okay, fine, I can do this. If you're gonna have to force me to do something, I'll do music. And so it really was thankful to those, thanks to those parents that were able to tell my mom about these resources, or else she would have not known. And there's hundreds of people out there, parents that don't know about these programs. And as my role at the school that I work at, Carson, the majority of the student body is Latinos and majority brown and black students. And so most of them come from low income neighborhoods, similar to how I grew up. And so I try to remind these kids that they get a free program. It's band, instrument rentals, if broken instrument, all of this is included. It's all free. It's a free program for the kids. They get a lesson every week. They get sectionals. They get any sort of equipment that they need, like reeds or slide grease, anything like that. They all get it for free. So I try to remind the kids that this is not every Chicago public school has a program like that. If at all, there's only a few that do have a music program or a music class in general. My elementary school did not have a music program. And so that's a big barrier, just having a music class like in a school. That's also it's not found very often.
So, let me ask the flip side of that, which is solutions. What, in your experience, which programs or public policies have been particularly effective at overcoming barriers to accessing high quality music education in childhood?
kind of to continue speaking, but I'm really hyping up Merit right now. But again, a program like Merit, having the conservatory that I talked about on Saturdays, it's still going on and it's tuition free. So absolutely, you don't have to pay. That's also what I tell the students. You don't have to pay for that program. And it's band, orchestra, theory classes, composition classes, all these types of classes that are for free, instrument rentals that are low cost. They have financial aid that is one of my students. I teach her percussion class. She gets her percussion pack with a little bell kit and a snare drum in it for $9 a month, which is incredible, at least because instruments are so expensive. So I think implementing more of these programs, it shouldn't just be Merit that has a program like this. We should have these in all the cities, everywhere, just to have access to these types of programs would be, I think, a big fix solution.
Yeah, I think also just exposure, because like a barrier that I experienced for my music education, I was very fortunate to have very supportive parents, and I was in music programs, but for me, my biggest challenge was finding inspiration. And as I said, like I started when I was 3, and it wasn't until I was 13 that I really like found myself loving classical music for the first time. And that was when I switched to this teacher who, when I went to the summer festival and I saw a string quartet play for the first time when I was 13, and I was really blown away. It was the Ataka string quartet, who are still performing. And I was like, wow. I was like, that was my first time hearing a real professional string quartet. And because my previous teacher, she never really had us do anything like that. We never went and saw performances. So I think being able to, be able to push these performances and have children come to these classical music performances, I think can really be impactful and inspire them.
I'm in the very privileged situation to be in one of the biggest orchestras in Germany, at least. And we have, since 2002, we have a very good education program. What was actually, Sir Simon Rattle started this program some 20 years ago. And we now reached already 190,000 audience this last year, with more than 900 performances just from the education without the orchestra's performances. And I think when I say when I grew up, the greatest thing was playing together. This is something, not only playing together, but also experience music from very close, or even sitting beside an orchestra musician. Things like this are very important. And Renata has had an internship with our education development department. And I have to say that what I see there is already a lot taking very young people into a dress rehearsal of the Berlin Philharmonic for just 20 minutes, not for 2 hours, but for 15, 20 minutes. Really low entry, not to ask them to really listen to a Wagner opera, definitely, but just get the feeling of what it means to make music together is something that is very helpful. And yeah, there's a lot of this going on, and I think this development goes on. And one of the latest things was, for example, we have this B-Phil orchestra, what is made from amateurs, and people can apply, and we do audition, mostly online. And the last one was in Japan, so we had an amateur orchestra from all Japan, then coached by our members and conducted by our principal conductor in a concert right before our symphony concert at Sandro Hall. Things like this, like building communities, doing all this, but really get them to listen and to be a part of the orchestra is, for me, the key, what we try to do.
Sorry, I just wanted to speak more about the education department at the Berlin Philharmonic. It was, the time that I spent there was really incredible because I grew up with the Chicago Symphony super close. And obviously it's still one of my favorite orchestras in the world, but I don't remember a time that they had ever done a event for children that I was able to participate in. And when I went to Berlin, every day it seemed like there was something that was going on. Whether it was the open dress rehearsals, which we were doing every single day, it felt like, or they have this festival called the Young Star Festival, where they let groups from all around. We even had a group from Vienna play the summer that I was there. Just being able to play on the stage where the Berlin Philharmonic plays is just, it's an incredible opportunity for young children, even if they're playing something like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like it's still, that's what, I don't know, it inspires young people to keep going. And yeah, it's truly an example, the education department at the Berlin Phil.
So I find the conversation that we're having about the international context really interesting, and I'm actually going to ask Nicholas specifically this question. You've worked obviously a lot with the foundation has worked with people all across the world. Have you encountered examples of countries that are doing a really good job of promoting music education among children? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Oh, I wish you didn't ask me that question. Yes, many countries, but what has been my experience after visiting so widely around the world is that most countries have very similar highs and lows and very similar struggles and very similar plights within that community that believes that this is important. So you will have, and specifically what I mean by that is I think perhaps countries that we elevate in our minds to have it sorted, and things are all free and all fantastic. There are more challenges than may meet the eye. I mentioned obviously earlier the El Sistema program in Venezuela. It's very complicated to look at how that can be translated around the world. The program we have in Scotland has been one of the more successful examples of that, to teach such vast numbers, millions of young people, to teach them to a high level. Music participation, instrumental learning does not happen easily, and there's been a lot of criticism around the internal workings of how that is possible, how you can have that many symphony orchestras that sound that phenomenally good. The first time I went there, hearing an orchestra of 10-year-olds playing Egmont Overture like it was nothing to them. But of course, the principles of Maestro Abreu, who founded El Sistema, were to play and to fight together. So it was very much a sort of defending your right to play, and had a very sort of strong mission statement. But he understood the power of the catalogue itself, the power of the manuscripts, the scores, the power of hundreds of accumulated years of people writing down something that, provided you can learn to read those notes, you can access that entire language and that whole world. I'm going to think of other things as soon as we leave this stage. I know that for sure.
Well, I would love to be able to continue this conversation, but unfortunately we are running a little short on time. So I'd want to please give us a round of applause for our panelists, please. So, we're going to end today. I'd like to end our lecture today by introducing Matthew Van Biesen, who's going to provide some concluding remarks. Matthew has served as the president of the University Musical Society at the University of Michigan since 2017. He previously served as executive director and then president of the New York Philharmonic from 2012 to 2017. A native of St. Louis, Missouri, he earned a Bachelor of Music degree in French horn performance from Indiana University and was the recipient of an honorary Doctor of Musical Arts degree from Manhattan School of Music. Please join me in welcoming Matthew to the stage.
It's a risky endeavor to have to speak last, especially with this incredible group, and who have said so many brilliant things and profound things today. But I'm delighted to be here, and I first and foremost want to thank Nicola Benedetti for not just being here for today, but for really incredibly visionary remarks. Thank you, Nikki, for this. It's an incredible gift to us and to the rest of the cultural world, all that you're doing. I want to thank our panelists. What an impressive all-star group, folks that we've worked so closely with at UMS and are working so closely with. I can't say enough for the honor that we have to have you here and to be with us today. I want to thank the incredible staff at CHEAR, and I want to thank Cao-Ping Chua and the entire CHEAR team who've really been extraordinary to work with, so thank you to all of them. And I, of course, want to thank my colleagues at UMS. These are folks who go above and beyond each and every day. This week, which I'm going to tell you about just in a second, is an incredibly demanding week for our organization. Exciting, but incredibly demanding. But events like today and some of the other things that are happening really embody who we are or who we aspire to be at UMS. And then lastly, I want to thank all the leadership here at the University of Michigan, at Michigan Medicine, and really to this community. We know at UMS and who have the privilege to work in the arts just how lucky we are to do what we do in this community and to be able to welcome extraordinary artists and extraordinary creative people into our community and to work together and create these sort of impactful moments. So thank you to all of them. I just want to say that today is part of a very, very special week here at UMS. And some of you are, I know, well aware of what else is happening. But one of the things I think is just important to mention is that Nicola will be making her UMS debut at long last on Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. right here in Rackham Auditorium. We've been chasing her for a few years now, and so thrilled. This concert will just be stunning, so please come. It's 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoon here in Rackham. Friday and Saturday night, we have the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra here with Wynton Marsalis. They will be performing on Friday night in collaboration with students from the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. They will be performing Wynton's Fourth Symphony, The Jungle. And then on Saturday night, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra will perform by themselves a great concert called Duke in Africa. And they actually just performed, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra just performed for 2,500 students this morning in Hill Auditorium, K through 12 students from all over the region. Yesterday, there was a Ford School event with Wynton Marsalis. Yesterday, there was also a panel at the Institute for Social Research featuring several folks, including Stefan Dorr and Mark Clegg. Stefan also taught a horn masterclass yesterday evening at the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. I could go on. There's a lot more. It's an incredible array of opportunities that we are working to create for this community, for our own community here in Ann Arbor and next door in Ypsilanti, in Flint, in Detroit, in Dearborn. It's super important, I think, that all of us, again, who have that privilege to work in the arts, that's how we need to be thinking of this work, not in an insular way, but always sort of pushing and stretching ourselves and thinking about how we can make a difference in the world. So I want to sort of wrap things up, but there's no way I can't just say a quick word or two about this discussion today, the importance of music and the arts in our world, and also acknowledge that we are living in a very challenging moment in our world. So we're thinking about these large-scale issues and the way in which music can impact young people and their development, but we're also doing it in this sort of very, very uncertain period in our world. Whether it's political, whether it's cultural, whether it's economic, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's election uncertainty, to say nothing of the volatility in higher education. when you feel this sort of swirl going on, I said to Nikki on the way in, it's these moments that we draw on things that we've learned as musicians, and that's really staying incredibly focused on the fundamentals. The fundamental things, the foundational elements that we want to stay focused on. This is what musicians do, this is what great artists do, to not just center themselves, but actually to move forward and to be better. And Nikki, thinking about how you talked about values and clear goals, and really staying focused in that work. And all of you as artists I know hold this dear. So one thing that we are trying to do at UMS and my extraordinary colleagues is really staying laser focused right now on the things that we feel we can affect, things that we feel that we can passionately and effectively advocate for, things that we can do with purpose and intention, and always thinking about how we can support artists, how we can support young people, talking about service. That's a thing that just has to center us, and also never forgetting joy in what we do. So I know it sounds so cliche from an arts person, but through all the things that have been going on in this country and around the world, the arts are in no way incidental. They're crucial. And I think we have an opportunity here, and every place around the world, each place has an opportunity to be a university, an institution, a community that really incorporates the arts, centers the arts in what they do. We know how important, all of us who've had the benefit of music and the arts in our life, we know how important they are for your life, for how you develop as a young person, and we know how important they are for the broader society in this moment. So we thank you all for being here today. We thank you again, all of you at CHEAR. We thank our incredible panel. We thank you, Nicola, for your great remarks today. Have a wonderful evening, and let's continue to stay very, very focused.